Right. Welcome, everyone. We are live. Thanks for being here with us today on this Sunday, October 5th, 2025, as some call it. Hey, everyone in the chat. Hey, Angela, Neil, and Mary Louise. Thanks for being here. So yeah, excited to jump into this topic today. Darth has been putting this presentation together for the past few weeks, and he's very excited to share about it. So the tidbits that I've received have been um, very eye-opening, and I'm excited to dive into this further. So yeah, I'm very honored to be joined here by Darth Phaedrus sitting next to me. It's been a minute since we've done a presentation like this, so thanks for being here, and yeah, thanks for joining.
Yeah, I'm happy to be doing this. It was a lot of information, and the hardest part was deciding what to put in and what to cut out. The topic of the soul, it's a massive topic, and it's been a long road getting to where we are here today, and even just to discuss a small part of the road, like just the Egyptian part. You could spend a week just discussing what ancient Egypt contributed to our belief systems today. So a large part of that was organizing information, but I have streamlined it to bare bones, just the basic information that we need to understand where we are today.
Awesome. Yeah, and fortunately, as always, he's put together a great presentation for us to go over, a document for us to follow. So, um, yeah, I don't have anything else to add. Do you want to just jump right into the document?
Yeah, let's just jump in. But I do want to say that I wasn't able to do, I think we're going to have to split it up into two parts. So today will just be part one, and then there'll be a part two. So part one is really just the history.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good. No need to rush anything. That's where we get the best out of it. So yeah, on the nature of the soul. So what is the soul? Um, where has this definition changed over time, and where are we today? And how can we get back to the sort of timeless, definitionless version of us, which is, the nature of consciousness itself. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into this topic. So here's the document to get us started, and I'll just let you lead the way.
All right. So we're currently residing in chaos. Um, People's beliefs are inconsistent, and they're also contradictory, not just with what one person believes next to another, but what people believe within themselves. A lot of people's beliefs don't even agree with themselves. They're inconsistent beliefs, and there's reasons for that. We have multiple belief systems, such as religion, science, nihilism. We have multiple histories, multiple languages, multiple heritages, multiple cultures, everyone intermingling. So it's a big dumpster fire. So it's understandable if people are confused. And then on top of that, besides all the natural confusion, history and truth has been deliberately obscured and falsified multiple times on top of each other. So even if you're honestly looking for the truth, you have to sort through all the lies, um, which is part of what I've done to make this document.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess just beginning.
Yep, that's what I just said there. So now there are some commonalities even between Christian and pagan perspectives on the soul, and that's because they all come from an ancient philosophical concept that influenced both traditions. Um, Plus, we all live in the same reality. So there's going to be commonalities. The best way to really understand what it is that we're talking about is to go through a timeline of uh, of where the idea of soul even originates. And once we go through that timeline, then we'll have a better idea of what it is that we're talking about. So there's a disclaimer when we're talking about the timeline of the soul. So, the current widely accepted version of history is extremely contaminated and sabotaged with intentional and deliberate falsifications. Even if the historical record was not vandalized, time is not an absolute truth anyway. History is changed by the ever-changing present in the same way that the present also changes the future. Furthermore, there are multiple valid histories that all lead to our current present. There are also real histories that actually happened, but are no longer linearly accessible from our current position in space-time. Nevertheless, looking into the current vision of histories can teach us a lot about the present and also the future. Keep in mind that some timelines are not entirely compatible with the current one, therefore, some ideas may not translate. So, what do I mean by this? So, every decision that you make in the present changes the future. Okay. Um, but the decisions you make cut off possible futures. So, let's say that I don't know, like right now I got two legs, right? So my future, I have multiple futures in which I have two legs, right? But if I get into a horrible car accident and I lose one, right? Now that potential future in which I have both is gone. And now all of my futures, I just have one leg, right? So so those potential futures existed and they were real until a choice was made. And then poof, they disappear. So the past is the exact same way. There can be a past timeline and it happened and it was real, but then we make decisions and we make choices. And the current choices and decisions that we make are no longer compatible with that past timeline. And so the time just goes poof, it disappears, no longer accessible, right? So the past is a very fluid thing and it's constantly being changed by the present. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. However, there are artifacts of the past that make it all the way through. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to look at all of the perceived history of the soul, all the valid history that we have access to, because that shapes our perception of the present. That makes sense.
Yeah. And it reminds me of that Rage Against the Machine lyric of who controls the past now controls the future, who controls the present now controls the past, and who controls the present is a
Right,
question, you know. So it's
right,
like this continual effort to dilute our sense of groundedness into what's real and what's true by this obfuscation of these these malleable elements of the past and the future, which are both you know constructs. They're not really real. The only thing that is real is the here and now. So anyway, just wanted to relay that.
right. The experience is real.
Yeah, the experience is real.
Okay, so time begins in what's called prehistory. In prehistory, there's no beginning to it really, but it goes up to 3600 BCE. Now, what you have to understand is we have BCE, which is before the Christian era, and then we have CE or AD, which is the Christian era. So the dates actually on the BCE, they run down, but with the CE, they run up. Okay, so prehistory to 3600 BCE. Prehistory is the time period before written records, before even speech. Every aspect of recorded history, both pagan and Christian, comes from the occultist, shamanic prehistory. There's no other source, except for the timelines where humanity was created, modified, guided by previously existing high civilization. But even those civilizations originate from occultist, shamanic prehistory. So you can't escape prehistory. Ancient shamans, from the Evenki word that means one who knows, believed and taught in an animated spiritual world of living energy. People and objects were just the densest and most material part of that energy field. Everything was alive and a spirit or soul.
Is this picture
That's a picture of a shaman.
like a cave drawing?
It's a cave drawing, and you can see there's some mushrooms there.
Mm.
And that's kind of like the pixelation
Mm,
that happens when you take those mushrooms
mm.
and you kind of pass into to
The
the
spirit
spirit
realm.
realm. Yeah.
Mm, interesting.
The shamanic cosmology separated reality into three worlds in one, representing layers of consciousness. The shaman is one who chooses to walk between the worlds. The upper world is the realm of the future, potential, purpose, destiny, and spiritual inspiration. It is the place of dreams, the spirit talking place, and the garden of origins. Experiencing the upper world brought a sense of wholeness, wonder, and total knowledge. The middle world is the physical, day to day reality where ordinary life takes place. It is the domain of personal identity, relationships, and the environment governed by the laws of space time. Shaman can perceive both the physical and energetic aspects of the middle world, allowing them to see things others cannot. Um, Middle world is also where you get the word Midgard
Hmm. And Middle Earth
in
from
Middle
Tolkien.
Earth. Yep. The lower world is the realm of the unconscious, ancestors, ancestral baggage, and the past. It is the place of psychological wounds, but also of potential for maturation through shadow work. In this world, shamans often connect with other than human peoples like animals, plants, and stones. The three worlds were connected by a colossal world tree or axis mundi. The axis mundi was also visualized by a cosmic mountain or pillar that binds the three worlds together and was the symbol of creation, life, wisdom, and immortality.
Do you want me to show that picture and we'll go over it real quick?
Yeah.
All right. I'm just going to pull up. This is the picture from the show card.
Yeah. Is that Yggdrasil?
Yeah, Yggdrasil. I can find it. Here we go. So I'll pull this one up onto the screen. So here you can see a depiction of this tree that unites all realms. So you've got um, the lower realm depicting the snakes, the unconscious realm. Um, mm, Perhaps is this plane is at the middle world,
That's your level Earth.
and then pointing up and probably off screen would be because it's immaterial, so that would be the
Correct.
higher world, higher realm. So
Correct.
this is just an ancient depiction of is that a Norse word? Yggdrasil? Is that Norse
Yggdrasil is the Norse word.
term for
A
it?
lot of the Norse mythology came directly out of prehistoric times. So their culture sprang up organically
Yeah,
outside of the system that was started in Egypt and Babylon.
right. So you can see in the depiction, it has this unconscious shadow realm full of mazes, that so you have to wander through the mazes in order to um, ascend through the straight and narrow gate pathway in order to rise up to, which would be Mount Meru, the center point where you are centered. And this is, level earth, guarded by or surrounded by the ice wall, but also surrounded by the Ouroboros, or the snake eating its tail, symbolizing the cyclical nature of this experience. And um, yeah, yeah. Do you have anything else to say on that?
So not only does the physics of how they viewed the world at that time, not only does it affect our physical world, but this was mostly a, a, a energetic um, type of operation. So this was a map not just of the physical world, but also of the human condition and of human consciousness. So the consciousness that we're aware of is the world that we see. The five physical senses. Things we can touch, taste, see, and hear. But beneath that, in our subconscious, are all sorts of animal instincts. And in those animal instincts lie the potential for fear and hunger and attachment and revenge and all of these darker instincts and motivations that then can drag us down. And then above our human consciousness are the higher principles that can then raise us up. And so each of these principles are trying to make the world either better or worse. But that's all just part of who we are. So according to the ancient shamanic tradition, these three worlds in one was not just the world we were walking in, but it was the world that was walking in us.
Mm.
So we were both in the three worlds, but the three worlds were also in us. So they had a very holographic view of the universe,
Mm.
that all points of the universe were contained in all points of the universe.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily making the world worse. It's simply just the mechanism to destroy stagnation.
Correct.
So it's like if we don't consciously engage with this experience, then there are mechanisms in place that will um, remove that portion, which is the stagnation, the complacency, all of that. Creation wants us to be alive, wants us to be engaged with, not that's why the where the line come, if thou art lukewarm, I will spew thee out of my mouth, because it's part of that process of bringing life to this experience and life to the story that's playing out.
It was also the job of the shaman to keep all of these forces in balance, because when the forces were balanced and proper in the proper order, then things turned out well. But when the forces became imbalanced, whether too high or too low, then that's when suffering resulted.
Hmm. All right. So we'll go back to the document here. Yeah, and I said in the chat, but feel free to relay any questions or anything that you'll have as we go through this, and let me know if there are any issues with, um, yeah, anything as we're going through. All right.
Right, so the three worlds were connected by a colossal world tree.
Yeah.
It was a symbol of creation, life, wisdom, and immortality. This tree is also the tree from the Garden of Eden. So everything that came after got all its elements from shamanism. There isn't any other source. A soul was formed by concentrating and stabilizing energy from the surrounding background field. When the person died, this energy dispersed and returned to the background energy field. Think of the way a tornado coalesces, stabilizes, and disperses. Therefore, the soul was seen as part of this spiritual energy, not separate from it. There was no death, only states of life and consciousness. The ancient shamanic people did not identify with the individual, they identified with the background energy. The person was just something the background energy was doing. Think just because the tornado disperses, the air does not disappear. The tornado is just something the air is doing. Traumatic experiences such as intense pain, fear. Actually, let's discuss that paragraph.
Mhm.
Because that right there is the core belief of reincarnation.
Mhm.
So the ancient shamanic people, um, there was really only life and different forms of life. And they didn't view themselves as something separate from God or separate from the environment or separate from each other. They viewed themselves as everyone was just the same person. We're all just here in different forms, different places, different times, but we're basically all the same person. And and I'm just something that the divine is doing. I'm just something that God is doing right now. I'm just another form of God. And that was something very consistent in their beliefs. So the rock was God, The ground was God, the air was God, the tree was God, and they were God also. Everything was God. There wasn't anything that wasn't. And so because of that, there wasn't any real fear of death because they would just go back to being God. And so their life was one of everything that they did was something, it was a relationship with God. Um, and there wasn't any activity that they engaged in that wasn't some sort of divine spiritual activity. It was the overriding purpose of their life. Um, so they didn't even see their birth as their beginning. Their birth was just them manifesting here on earth. So they all viewed themselves as having a pre-human existence, as the background energy,
Right.
and nothing ever really truly disappeared, including all of their
Hmm.
ancestors. It's a completely different way of thinking than what we do today.
Right.
Now, traumatic experiences such as intense pain, fear, or grief could cause this energy field to break, fragment, or become loss, a phenomenon known as soul loss. Soul loss was when part of a person's soul departed the body and dispersed into the background spirit to find solace. A lost part of the soul leaves an individual vulnerable, like a weakened immune system, making them susceptible to other negative energies or spiritual intrusions, and was a serious condition leading to feelings of emptiness, powerlessness, and vulnerability. Shamans then performed soul retrieval to find and return lost soul parts. The shaman used their spirit or spirit guide to accompany and guide the fragmented individual into the spirit realm, locate the fragmented soul part, and bring it back and reintegrate it into the patient's body. The respirited person then regained vitality and power. This is actually the birth of modern psychology. The processes are actually very similar. Um, we tend to have a very derogatory view of shaman type people,
Hmm.
but they were highly specialized, um, highly methodological. They had very specific techniques. They were very intelligent, and their methodology for healing was very effective.
Yeah. Yeshua was a shaman.
Yes, he was.
Anyone who steps into the Christic energy is a shaman because that's the nature of the Christ is merging the two realms.
Correct. So, in order to be a shaman, there were two things that were required. You had to be one who knew, so one who actually lived. So, from the prehistoric perspective, knowledge wasn't book knowledge. Knowledge was life knowledge. So there was a difference between just knowing the path and actually walking it. So shamans were people that had to know the path, they had to walk it, do it themselves, but they were also one who chose. So they knew and they chose to walk the way. And Christ was certainly someone who knew and he chose to walk that way.
Yeah.
Let me see. Bring it back, reintegrate it into the patient's body. The respirited person then regained vitality and power. So, so from their perspective, like say courage would be considered part of your soul. So then let's say that you go through a traumatic experience, right? I don't know, you get robbed in your home, right? And then that part of your soul, the courage part, maybe it's gone, right? And now you're feeling PTSD, right? And you're nervous and you're scared and you can't find your courage. Well, you might go to someone that could help you find your courage again. And for the ancient shamans, they might, give you some mushrooms and sit with you. But they would have their methodologies that were effective. And then when you were done, you would have your courage again and be able to move forward in a healthy, balanced, intelligent manner.
Hmm.
So some prehistoric peoples had more than one soul. These alternate souls could be accessed, granting special abilities such as telekinesis or lycanthropy,
Lycanthropy is
turning into an animal.
animal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Additional souls could also be earned or captured, granting spiritual access, wisdoms, and powers that benefited the person and the community. There is strong archaeological evidence of a widespread and complex belief in resurrection and reincarnation by the prehistoric shamanic peoples. Many early societies viewed time and life as cyclical rather than linear. This worldview, where natural processes like the seasons repeat in an eternal loop, lends itself to the concept of the soul following a similar pattern of death and rebirth. Now, I do want to say that since the shamanic prehistoric people didn't use writing, or if they did, it's been completely destroyed. So, like, how do we know? Okay, so I just gave this whole description of prehistoric shamanic people, but they didn't write, and everything was word of mouth. So, so the way that we know what they believed is there are remnants of these people around, um, Aborigines, um, native peoples, North mythology, as well as records that was kept by the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Hindus, the Buddhists. So so we don't have direct access, but we have like the next step to it. So this is sort of a composite, and none of this is really debated anyway.
All right.
The rise of civilization, Egypt and Babylon, 3600 BCE to 600 BCE. So religion in ancient Egypt and Sumer sprung out of shamanic prehistory, allegedly.
Hmm.
Spirituality in a true shamanic environment is free. What formed in the ancient Middle East was religious systems of control. The rise of spoken and written language gave birth to administration, bureaucracy, linear time, higher individuality, because you can name people, as well as deception, manipulation, and complex control systems. There is no lie or hostility when speaking and perceiving telepathically in the unity of the background field. There can be no lie about history or the soul if there's no written record.
So this is where the story of the Tower of Babel comes from, before potentially language and spoken word, when we were unified in this sort of telepathic and consistent way. And then through the development of the ego and a desire for power and to take the kingdom of heaven by force, then that's what inspired the works of men to build this tower, which um, could just be symbolically of creating language and the ability to lie and deceive, which is what scattered us to the winds and all across the earth, because through that sort of mental sickness, it spread and we spread. Um, yeah.
Correct. Correct. Um, the ability to name people and to name things um, went a long way toward controlling people.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so this picture here, this is out of ancient Egypt. So you have the person that has died and they're now being mummified, and above them, you have a picture of their soul, and it's kind of flying away
With an omega symbol
with an omega symbol.
as the
It's the
as
end.
the end. Yeah.
Yep. Ancient Egypt and Sumer were largely parallel contemporary civilizations that arose independently but shared striking similarities due to geographic factors and human development patterns, such as their reliance on river systems for agriculture, the invention of the wheel and writing, polytheistic religious systems, and the rise of complex urban societies. Um, When I say complex urban societies, think usury. While both developed similar technologies and social structures, their political systems and views of the afterlife differed, with Sumer fragmented into city-states and Egypt unified under a single ruler. And Egyptians viewed the afterlife more optimistically than the Sumerians did. It's generally agreed that Babylon was established first, but rose more gradually, allowing Egypt to arise to power first. Now, this picture here, this is out of Babylon, and the figure on the left is a male ghost. And apparently he was hunting or haunting or lusting after the woman on the right. And so this picture is part of a larger cuneiform that was a directions on how to perform an exorcism of this apparently horny ghost. So both cultures believed in an afterlife, believed in spirits. The ancient Egyptians believed that everyone had a soul of two parts, the Ka, which was the life force, and the Ba, which is the personality, that required a physical home of the cat, which is the body. They believed that the soul could achieve a rebirth after death into an eternal afterlife in the blissful field of Aru, which was the field of reeds. It was complicated. This was done by a lengthy, complex 70-day mummification process to preserve the body so that it could contain the life force and personality long enough to form the Ak or immortal spirit and enter into Aru or the paradisic field of reeds. Only the royal priesthood could manage this process. So right there you have a control mechanism.
Right.
So you're telling people that when they die, they have the opportunity to go to a blissful paradise, right? That's something a lot of Christians believe in, paradise, right? But the only way you can do it is you have to go through an expensive process, and only specialized people could do it. So that's different from the prehistoric shamanic perspective. Um, the shamans believe that everyone was part of this energy, no one was separate from it, and everyone went back to it. And sooner or later, everyone came back. That was the original perspective. Now the ancient Egyptians are saying, no, if you want to go to this place, you're going to have to pay us money, and we're going to have to do this thing that you can't do. And they managed to stretch it out over 70 days.
More money,
More money.
more power.
And if you didn't comply, they had the option not to do it for you. So imagine that, do this thing or you're going to die and you're not going to go to paradise.
Sounds familiar.
Yep. Now, the ancient Babylonians also believed all people had a complex spiritual essence that continued after death. But if the Egyptians chose the carrot approach to control, the Babylonians went with the stick. No matter their deeds, all people went to the underworld, known as Urkalu or Ursetu, a dark, desolate place where they ate dust. There was no concept of physical resurrection or reincarnation, and no judgment was passed for good or bad deeds. However, the dead could receive relief from eating dust based on burial rites and the continued devotion of the living. Of course, only a special and powerful elite priesthood could approve and facilitate this process. So that's another control mechanism.
Yep. Fear.
Fear.
Fear of hell.
You're going to die. Nothing can stop that. You're going to go to this place. It's dark and you have nothing to eat but dust. But we can send you food. Only we can send you food.
Right. Death cults.
Yep. And all of modern Western civilization comes from these two cultures.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so there's another influence, and that's the Greek influence. So the rise of Greece, 1450 BCE to 140 BCE. Any questions?
Nope, no questions yet.
Okay. Ancient Greece probably did not arise directly out of prehistoric shamanism. While some scholars have proposed connections, the claim is highly speculative and lacks conclusive evidence. The theory is largely based on topological similarities rather than proven historical links. That's the other thing, is that these scholars, there's an infinite number of theories, and then they discuss all of them. So there, no matter what you Google out there, you're going to find some scholar that proposed it. So when you're navigating this sort of thing, it takes a lot of years of research to figure out what's most likely true. So like I put this I was thinking about this document for a couple of weeks, and I put it together in like 3 days. But I was really only able to do that because I've spent like 30 years reading this stuff. So, all right. So as far as can be ascertained from the historical record, this is where the Greeks come from. Noah, from Noah's flood, had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. From Ham came Canaan, Cush, Mizraim, and Put. Canaan had 10 sons, Heth, Armor, Arvad, Girgash, Jebus, Zemar, Ark, Zidon, Sin, and Hamath. The Greeks came from Heth. So Heth, the son of Canaan, the son of Ham, the son of Noah, eventually he became the Hittites. The Hittites were driven out of the land of Canaan into ancient Anatolia around 2000 BCE. And they joined with the Lydians, the Phrygians, and the local Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. These people eventually merged and became the Neolithic Anatolian farmer. Anatolian farmers migrated to Greece around 1500 BCE, not due to a specific event, but due to the spread of sedentary farming lifestyle and technologies. Ancient Greek thought became prevalent and persisted even after the fall of the Achaean League to Rome in 146 BCE. Much of the Western world is modeled after ancient Greek thought, which is why ancient Greece is relevant to our discussion. Ancient Greek religion and culture was not uniform, but was a diverse collection of local cults bound by shared myths and an orthopraxic system of formality. Belief was not as important as performing that belief as perfectly and correctly as possible. And that's what the word orthopraxic means. It means to do something as good as you can. It's doing something perfectly. So the Greeks had these common myths, and they came through a roundabout pathway from the Canaanites. They mixed with some other cultures. And then eventually that permeated into our modern Western civilization. But the Greeks, they didn't have a consistent belief. And a lot of their beliefs were contradictory. So let's say that we're both Greeks, right? And I don't know, your perspective on your religion is that every Tuesday you have to kick a puppy, right? That's your Greek perspective. I don't object to that. The only thing is you have to do it, and you have to do it perfectly. And if you don't do it, that's when I get upset as a Greek man. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So they believed, they worshiped quality, they worshiped virtue, they worshiped excellence, they worshiped the idea of goodness, but they felt that it was manifested in infinite ways. And so they had all these stories kind of talking about it, but everyone had their own personal angle of it. And they didn't care. They said, just believe in something and stick to it and do it. I don't care what you believe, but believe. And you better be honest about your beliefs, is what that was the Greek method. All right, so ancient Greeks believed that the soul or psyche was the animating force that left the body at death and ended up in an afterlife called Hades. Hades is a word you'll find in your Bible. The Greek Hades consisted of three planes of existence. The Asohodal metals, which is a gloomy and forgetful place. Elysium, a paradise for the heroic or virtuous. Didn't we just watch a movie by that name?
We have.
And Tartarus, a place of eternal punishment. So that's two names that you'll find in your Bible, Hades and Tartarus. And these are also concepts that are now what you'll find in modern Western Christianity. Interestingly, most ancient Greeks did not generally believe in or promote resurrection after the body was destroyed. They actually looked down on it. They didn't think it was very likely. And if it did happen, they thought it was bad. However, some did believe in reincarnation, such as the mystery cults Orpheism and the philosophers Pythagoras and Plato, who described a cycle of rebirth to achieve soul perfection. The ancient Greeks depict the Psyche as a beautiful maiden with butterfly wings and is the immortal wife of the Greek Eros or the Roman Cupid, the god of erotic love and desire. The Greek word psyche, which is the same thing as soul, is the same word for butterfly. The metamorphosis of a butterfly to a caterpillar, or the metamorphosis of a butterfly from a caterpillar to a winged insect was seen as parallel to the stages of human life and the soul's journey. The soul is believed to leave its chrysalis upon death to fly away, making the butterfly a fitting symbol of the soul during sleep or after death. Okay, so rise of Israel, 1446 BCE to 136 CE. Okay, so here is a significant split in perceived history. Those that worship Jewish history believe that Israel left Goshen, Egypt in 146 BCE and entered the land of Canaan 1406 BCE. Israel then rapidly genocided and drove out the local population within 7 years, except for the Gibeonites, who tricked Joshua into a permanent peace treaty, the Sidonians in the territory of Asher, and the tribe of Gezer in the territory of Judah. However, archaeology does not support the specific narrative of a swift, unified, and destructive conquest of Canaan as described in the Bible, with scholars generally agreeing that a unified conquest did not happen. Instead, archaeological evidence supports a more gradual settlement process, where indigenous Canaanites gradually differentiated themselves from other Canaanites to form the early Israelite identity. Eventually, these Israelites, being just another ite, get taken into slavery in Babylon. There, the Israelites misabsorb parts of Babylonian history and claim it for themselves, backdating it into their history. The earliest indisputable mention of Israel is known as the Israel Stele and records a military campaign by Pharaoh Merneptah in Canaan, and famously states, "Israel is laid waste, its seed is no more." This inscription is considered the first extra-biblical reference to Israel and suggests that by the late 13th century BCE, Israel was an established people or social ethnic entity in the region. So no matter which timeline you subscribe to, Israelite history still plays a massive role in the formation of how the soul is perceived. Ancient Israelites initially believed that the dead went to Sheol, a dark, silent realm of the departed, but later developed beliefs in an afterlife with a resurrection and divine judgment, influenced by other cultures after the Babylonian exile. A good death involved a peaceful burial among ancestors, ensuring the family's continuity, while a violent or premature death was considered bad. The earliest clear reference to resurrection is in 1 Kings 17:17, when the prophet Elijah brings back a widow's son. Reincarnation is not mentioned until Matthew 16:13. While not promoted as true doctrine, neither is it disavowed. Okay, so most of us in the Western world identify as Christian, and most Christians identify as having come through the Old Testament, which is ancient Israel's history. So that's why it's important. So everyone's been affected by their perspective. Now it's interesting to note that up to this point, except for the ancient Egyptian and Babylonian documents, the ancient Hebrew documents don't really discuss the perspective of the soul. Very skimpy information. And the ancient Greeks, as far as themselves, they also didn't really discuss it that much. So most of our perspectives on the soul actually come from India. So the question is then, how did this Indian Hindu influence get into modern Western civilization? So other histories that discuss the soul are the pre-Hindu four Vedas that was written in 1500 BCE to 1200 BCE. The pre-Hindu Upanishads, that's 800 BCE to 300 BCE. The South Asian Hindu Ramayana, that's 700 BCE to 400 BCE. The Indian Hindu Puranas, that's 400 BCE to 100 CE. And then the Hindu Mahabharata, that's the fifth Vedas, or what we know today as the Bhagavad Gita. That's 400 BCE to 300 CE. And then there's the Buddhist Sri Lanka Tripitaka, or the three baskets, and that's 100 BCE. So all of these documents are actually much older than the Bible by like the four Vedas are older than the Bible by like 1,000 years. So there's no evidence that the four Vedas came directly from prehistoric shamanism. However, scholars have identified potential links and elements between early Vedic practices and shamanistic traditions, suggesting strong prehistoric influences. And there's no evidence to say that it didn't come from prehistoric times. So we have three cultures here that have direct contact with prehistorical times: Egypt, Babylon, and the Hindu cultures. So those are three branches and each of them had an idea of the soul, and each of those three branches lead to us today. So did Vedic Hinduism reach Israel through Greece, and how? Even asking this question is considered sacrilegious blasphemy in many circles. Every cult tries to establish its own unique supremacy. So what am I saying by this? Every culture, in order to validate itself, has to like say that it's separate from every other culture.
It's the best.
It's the best. Yeah, we're the best. We're separate. We don't share any ideas with anyone else. It's all us. And every culture that tries to do this also tries to say they try to predate themselves all the way to the back of the beginning of time. Right. And like we would do this too. Like, so we grew up in America, right? And we can remember part of our cultural heritage is we can remember the beginning of America,
Mhm.
right? But if America survived for like another like 1,000 years, somebody would like try to backdate America to the beginning of time and say that like Adam was created here in America. And like then you add another 2, 3,000 years on that, and would anyone know?
Right.
Would it be debated?
Right.
So 3,000 years from now, someone to be sitting down and saying scholars are saying that America was the first culture. So do we really know? I mean, we know about our culture because we were here and our parents were here, but like
Everything else is hearsay.
everything else is hearsay, correct? However, most of the information that I'm saying here is not really debated among the professional circles. All right, so there is significant philosophical and cultural exchanges between Vedic India and ancient Greece. Both Greek and Vedic cultures belong to the Indo-European language family, indicating a shared linguistic and cultural ancestry that suggests ancient interactions. Alexander the Great also established Greek states and trade routes into the East, creating opportunities for cultural and philosophical exchange between the two groups. Philosophers like Pythagoras, there you go, Pythagoras, 570 BCE to 495 BCE, discussed reincarnation, viewing the material world as a place for souls to be restored through multiple lifetimes. That's important um, because he was Greek, and reincarnation is not that's not Greek thought.
Mm.
That's Hindu thought. But he was discussing it.
Mm-hmm.
Later, Greek thinkers like Pyrrho, 365 BCE to 270 BCE, actually traveled to the East, were exposed to Indian philosophies, came back and wrote about them. So that's proof. Figures such as Plotinus, 205 CE, he was a key figure in Neoplatonism, were influenced by the Upanishads, which then spread further into the Greco-Roman world. So it's established the Greeks were influenced by the Hindus. Greek thought, which is called Hellenism, significantly penetrated into Jewish life, influencing everything from social structures and architecture to philosophy and religious thought, especially during the Hellenistic period following Alexander the Great's conquest in 332 BC. This led to the development of Hellenistic Judaism, characterized by the synthesis of Greek philosophical concepts like natural causality and cosmology with Jewish theology, most notably in the works of Philo of Alexandria, born 15 BCE, which is the exact time period of Christ. The influence is seen in the adoption of Greek language, customs, and even Greek artistic styles and synagogue architecture. So by 1600 AD, Jewish mysticism in the Zohar closely reflected Vedic thought. So we know that the Greeks had direct contact with the Hindus, and we know that the Jews had direct contact with the Greeks. Therefore, through the Greeks, the Jews were influenced by Hindu thought. So, the Hindu ideas that reached us today that we call Christian ideas, like Christianity didn't invent these ideas. They because there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
So there's a chain of custody, but each culture modifies the ideas. So Christians who worship Christianity instead of worshiping God, they might be offended that I'm saying this, but it's a fairly well established historical fact.
Right.
No questions.
No questions.
Okay. By the time Christ walked the earth, Vedic thought had not only reached into Hellenistic world through Greece, but also through Egypt long before. India and Egypt first made contact in the Indus Valley Civilization period, which is 3300 BCE to 1300 BCE, peaking in 2250 BCE, with evidence of a long history of trade and cultural exchange between the two civilizations beginning over 4,000 years ago. As a reference, the first king of Israel, Saul, began his reign in 1043 BCE. Indian artifacts are found in Egypt, and Egyptian artifacts are found in India. There's a direct contact via the Red Sea trade routes. Cultural exchanges even included influences like early Buddhism. So they're debating whether Hindu thought was managed to influence Jewish culture at the time of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
But it's even ridiculous even to deny it, because India was already influencing Egypt before Israel was even a nation.
Right.
And it was a long-term, highly established relationship. And then Egypt was influencing the entire Middle East.
Right. Fingerprints all over it.
Fingerprints everywhere. So what I'm trying to say is that the ancient world was a lot smaller than what we were led to believe. The history books want us to think that each little nation is its own little thing, not affected by the others.
Mm-hmm.
But if you grew up in Canaan, you could easily travel to India. Just start walking, get to Egypt, hop on a boat, and boom, you're in India. You could do it.
Mm-hmm.
It would probably be easier to do it back then than it is today. Well, I'm saying that like could I even leave the country right now? Do I have a passport, right? Did you need these sort of things back then?
Mm-hmm.
You just needed your walking stick and
Right.
right? I mean, would you even know like, oh, I've left the land of Canaan, like, oh, these pile of rocks mean that I've left the land of Canaan. I'm now in the territory of Egypt. Like, but the boundaries were not nearly as enforced as they are today.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying the ancient world was not what we think it is. All right, so here the timeline splits again between those that believe the mainstream Catholic Church narrative and those who know the suppressed apocryphal text. Well, there's the picture of the trade routes.
Right. Yeah, that's what we're referring to here.
Right? So you have Egypt, Arabia, and then right there is India. And so you have a highly developed Indian Hindu culture engaging in massive trade with Egypt. And meanwhile, Israel didn't even exist as a nation yet.
Right.
And the Hindu culture had a very developed sense of reincarnation, of the soul, of resurrection. So that's where it comes from. Okay, so Jesus was born in 8 BCE, and his parents, Joseph and Mary, fled to Egypt around 7 BCE to escape King Herod the Great's decree to kill the young children of Bethlehem. They stayed in Egypt for a few years, likely for around 3 years, until Herod's death in 4 BCE, after which an angel instructed Joseph to return to the land of Israel. Interestingly, in India, 1500 BCE, it was written in the Rig Veda that someone named Prajapati would die on a tree and create a new world for the sins of people. Every wise initiated shaman type person, every secret society, and every true mystery school at that time was looking for Christ. Each of the persons and organizations had their own motives. Some of them were hostile, like King Herod, right? That's why they had to flee to Egypt. So now we're going to skip over the actual ministry of Jesus, and we're going to focus on what people thought about it. So, skipping forward over Christ's ministry is where we'll find the major split in the timeline. The division lies between the Catholic Universal Church and the Cathars, and Cathars means purity. Rome, the same people that publicly burned Christians as punishment and a light source, officially adopted Nicene Christianity as its state religion in 380 CE with the Edict of Thessalonica, issued by Emperor Theodosius I. The decree established Christianity as the sole authorized religion of the Roman Empire. Parallel to the Roman Catholic Church development were smaller groups that rose and fell, but eventually led to the rise of the Cathars. First were the Manichaeans, 216 to 274 AD, and they were actually a major world religion. They believed in a fundamental conflict between light and darkness, where the soul is considered good and the body is associated with darkness and evil. Blended ideas from diverse religious traditions, including elements from Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, and Judaism, Christianity, Gnosticism, and they recognized four key figures in the lineage of prophets: Zarathustra, Buddha, Jesus, and Mani. And it was a major world religion. Eventually, a priest named Bogomil began preaching around 927 AD, and he was carrying on many of the ideas of the Manichaeans. The Bogomils believed the material world was created by Satan, not God, and they followed a strict ascetic lifestyle that rejected earthly possessions, marriage, and the sacraments of the Orthodox Church. They saw the human soul as God's creation, trapped within the evil physical body, and they sought spiritual liberation through extreme asceticism, including rejecting meat and engaging in fasting.
So Susie Q asks, did Jesus go to India to learn about from a shaman?
Okay,
The time frame of his life is missing from the Bible.
thank you. I was wondering if someone's going to ask that. So if you go back up, a little higher, right here. Okay, so this is one of the things when you're having a debate with someone, an argument, or if you're just having a conversation and you're trying to promote a teaching or idea, we shouldn't take advantage of other people's ignorance, and we shouldn't make stuff up. So, so we know that as a child, the official record is that Jesus went to Egypt. And we do know that Indian ideas were present in Egypt. However, Jesus was just a baby. All right, so he was born in 8 BCE. The next year, 7 BCE, is when he went. So he was only a year old. And then they were only in Egypt for 3 years. So when he came back, he would have been 4 years old. So that's too young for him to have been like initiated into any Hindu Indian um, methodology. And there's no record anywhere of Egypt of Jesus Christ going to India. There just isn't. After his alleged death, there are legends of him going to India, but that would have been after his works.
So your position is saying he never did travel to India?
Not before his alleged death.
Not before.
Afterward, there are valid timelines in which Christ went to India after his alleged death, after his resurrection, but not as a child
or a young adult.
or a young adult. There's no record of it anywhere. It's not to say that it did happen and there's just no record.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's no record. There's no myths. There's no rumors. There just isn't. But keep in mind that the entire world was looking for this guy. Um, so like Herod, like the three wise men, right? Where did these three wise men come? And they were from the east. So that's India, right? And they were looking for Christ as a baby, and they're the ones that told Herod. So that it's not to say that people didn't come to meet him. So yes, he grew up in the Nazareth, right? Bethlehem, or he grew up in Nazareth, right?
He was a
He was a
Nazarene.
Nazarite.
He was a Nazarene, which Nazareth
Nazareth,
wasn't
yeah.
necessarily a place. Nazarene was more a way of life.
But it's not to say that that he wasn't in. I'm not saying he wasn't initiated, and I'm not saying people didn't go to him to teach him stuff. Well, once again, that's going directly against what the mainstream narrative says, is that he had a pre-human existence and he got baptized and then he remembered that he was God, and then that's how he knew everything that he knew and could do everything that he did. So to say that he was part of any mystery tradition, that's different, but that's what the Cathars believed.
Mm.
So that's why I'm saying there's a major split in the timeline here. The Cathars, therefore, did not appear in a vacuum, but they represented a revival and evolution of ancient dualistic ideas, which found fertile ground after 1100 AD through direct transmission and adaptation of the Bogomil faith. The Cathars had no single or central leader, though any perfecti or good person could be a bishop and lead a local congregation. Cathar beliefs were centered on a dualist theology, positing a good God of light who created the spiritual realm and an evil God of darkness who created the material world, which is probably your first philosophy of the Matrix. They believed the soul was trapped in the material world by this evil creator through reincarnation and sought spiritual purity through an ascetic lifestyle. And their key ritual, the consol lamentum, which was a type of baptism. The Cathars believed that human souls were the sexless spirits of angels trapped in the material realm of the evil god Jehovah, or Yaldabaoth. They rejected Catholic sacraments, the material cross, and even the incarnation of Jesus. They believed in Jesus the man, not in Jesus the God. And they consumed a vegetarian diet. They did include fish and seafood, but they excluded other types of meat and poultry. And they practiced celibacy to avoid trapping more souls in the material world. And they were very decentralized. And they also, they that idea of the Greeks, that I don't care what you believe as long as you genuinely believe it and you do it to the best of your ability. The Cathars adopted that.
Mm.
So the Cathars believed a number of different things, but the most important thing to the Cathars is that you be a good person and honest in your belief.
Mm.
Meanwhile, the Catholic Church was making its own moves. In 382 CE, Pope Damasus I presided over the Council of Rome, and produced the first definitive list of sacred scripture. And this list included all the Pauline epistles and started to exclude the Apocrypha. Now, Hebrews 9, chapter 9, verse 27 says, and just as it is appointed for people to die once, and after that comes judgment. So because of that scripture, the Catholic Church took a position of being against reincarnation. Reincarnation was effectively removed from mainstream Catholicism in 553 AD by the Second Council of Constantinople, even though Origen of Alexandria, 185 AD to 354 AD, taught about the transmigration of souls. Origen of Alexandria is a very important figure to the Christian church. There might not even be a Christian church without him. He was one of the persons that moved the idea forward, and he taught reincarnation. But despite that was his position, they still they reverse position because of that scripture that the Apostle Paul wrote. Interestingly, instead of using what Jesus said and did to determine what Jesus believed, the Catholic Church went with the Apostle Paul, who was a murderer of Christians and a weaponeer of Christianity. The Cathars primarily relied on a version of Christian scriptures known as the Old Testament Apocrypha and other non-canonical works, including the Book of Enoch, the Book of Lamech, the Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs, the Assumption of Moses, the Psalms of Solomon, the Book of Jubilees, the Apocalypse of Elijah, the Questions of John, aka the Secret Supper, among others. They did not follow the same texts of the Catholic and Orthodox churches. They did not follow the same texts that the Catholic and Orthodox churches consider part of their canon. So they had their own Bible. Many Cathars also honored Mary Magdalene as a central spiritual figure, viewing her as a highly important spiritual teacher and even equating her with the divine feminine. This angered devotees of Mary. Some Catholic texts and testimonies suggest they believe in a spiritual marriage or close relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, contrasting with the Catholic Church's view of her as a repentant sinner. Legends circulated among the Cathars of a sacred Christic bloodline through the Magdalene, somewhere in France, with some royalty even claiming this blood. This was a direct threat to Catholic control. The Apocrypha of the Cathars was in a direct conflict with the control systems being set up by the Roman Catholic Church. The violent conflict between the Catholic Church and the Cathars over the nature of Christ and the soul of man was inevitable. And that statue is a statue of Mary Magdalene in France. Very, very famous one. Let me take a drink of water here.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And I know the history might be a little dry, but it's really important to see just how this came about. Where did these ideas come from? How did they get morphed over time? Um, so that we can start to reclaim the truth of it all.
I think it's fascinating.
Yeah,
Well, people lived and died
right.
over these ideas.
Yeah.
Innumerable people.
Wars fought,
Yeah.
genocides occurred, yeah,
Speaking
mass
of
migrations and all sorts of things.
So speaking of genocide, the Soul Wars, the Catholic genocide of the Cathars. Besides the Cathars, the Catholic Church wiped out many other people. The Huguenots, the Waldens, Innings, the Conversos, and the Moriscos, as well as others. But the crusade against the Cathars was especially vicious and horrifying. The Cathars believed in an evil material world created by Satan, rejecting the Catholic doctrine of a good God and the divinity of Jesus. They rejected the entire Catholic Church structure, including the priesthood and the sacraments like the Eucharist, viewing them as corrupted. Cathars refused to take oaths of allegiance and participate in military service, challenging the civil authority of the Church. Challenging the civil authority that the church was closely allied with. The Cathars developed their own system of religious leaders and preachers functioning as an alternative church. So the Catholic Church went to war against the Cathars with the launch of the Albigensian Crusade after a false flag murder of a papal legate. The conflict was marked by extreme violence including the indiscriminate slaughter of inhabitants during the siege of Béziers, where an estimated 15 to 20,000 people were killed. A papal legate commanded, "Kill them all, God will know his own." They just murdered an entire city of people just to eradicate an idea.
Right. Claiming some murder had happened, that they were retaliating, but
Yep.
like you said, were likely a false flag.
Yeah. The murder of Cathars continued for 20 years from 1209 to 1229, resulting in over 1 million dead. Cathar believers rejected violence and were committed to spiritual and nonviolent principles, making them ill-equipped to resist the military force of the Crusaders and Inquisitors. So they didn't really fight back.
Hmm.
I mean, other than closing the gates and just waiting to die.
Wow.
So I wonder what our world would look like if
They fought back.
if we had violent Cathars. I don't know. But then would they still be Cathars? It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, it's actually even more I mean, it's pretty impressive refusing to fight back against something that you say is okay. Evil is coming for me and coming for my children, and I'm going to refuse to fight back. That's obviously that's like next level commitment,
It's
right?
impressive will, but
It's even more than that
yeah.
because these guys actually walked into the fire.
Yeah.
Numerous Cathars. Well, hold on. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just saying it's somewhat foolish though, to hold
Maybe.
this position to this extreme, uh, in my opinion, when evil is there and we do nothing against it, then we are we are condoning it. We're condoning its spread and behavior.
This is funny because that's my position, right? And normally you're in the position of nonviolence, right? And
Mm.
I'm in the position of kill them all, right? These people are evil. Evil's not going to stop. Violence is the solution. But the Cathars also were strong believers in reincarnation. So they didn't, so that like, I think that played into their strategy.
Yeah, it could to an extent, relieve the fear behind what's happening, but it's also allowing evil to reign for whatever length of time that you're not confronting it. So of course it's always going to come back, but
Yeah, well, they thought they were some sort of divine plan. I mean, but 1 million of them died. Numerous Cathars faced death rather than convert to Catholicism. With a dramatic example occurring in the city of Menevere in 1210. After the city fell, its Cathar residents were given the choice to embrace Catholicism or face execution. A majority, including many priests, refused to renounce their faith, with some even willingly going to the pyre. The events at Minerve were not unique. Similar mass burnings occurred in other fallen Cathar strongholds throughout the Crusade. The Roman Catholic Church was once again burning Christians. So apparently, the Cathars basically were given the choice of giving up the idea of reincarnation, among other ideas, or walking into a fire and burning to death. And they chose en masse the fire because there are very few records. Like there are no records of the Cathars ever converting. I looked. They all believed so strongly that not only did they not fight back, but they chose the fire rather than give up their beliefs, their Christian beliefs. Which kind of like that's the same intensity of faith that the apostles had. Like if you Google how the apostles died, most of them died horrible deaths, but they refused to give up their Christian faith. I'm a bit behind, but from a bit behind the live, but how did any of the either the Greek or Roman mythology come into play during this time frame in terms of consciousness? So So that's the thing, is that the idea itself of reincarnation was originally comes from prehistoric times. Okay, the prehistoric shamans were the ones who originally believed in reincarnation, that everyone was a divine being and everyone went back to divinity when they died, and then everyone came back. That's the original belief. And then Egypt tried to wipe that out. Babylon tried to wipe that out. And so most people just started believing in some sort of hellfire, right?
And both of those cultures influenced the Greek and Roman, later Roman
Right.
culture.
Right. So they both Egypt and Babylon influenced the entire area. However, you have the Hindu culture. The Hindu culture was also active in the area. And through Egypt and through Greece, they reached Judaism. Um, Judaism, um, eventually through the works of Yeshua, became Christian. Christianity split in two: the Roman Catholic Church and then just other Christians. And then the other Christians believing in reincarnation, which came from the Greeks, which came from the Hindus, they burned to death at the hands of the Catholics. Now there's a Cathar. Does that answer the question, Lizzie?
Yeah, no, I think that would. But yeah, Lizzie, feel free to comment more. Just we did cover that in detail earlier in the presentation. So yeah, great question, but we did link that at the beginning.
The thing to remember about Christianity is so Christianity makes a division between Christian and pagan, but Christianity itself is pagan. Like all there is occultism. There isn't anything else. Everything comes from the occult. Everything comes from the prehistorical times. There's no other source. And what Christianity does is it takes part of that paganism, takes part of that prehistoric attributes, and they sanitize it and they call it Christian. And then they say this part is Christian and the other parts are pagan, when in reality, all of it's pagan because there isn't anything else. And then if you refuse to capitulate to their sanitized version, then they get hostile.
Hmm.
But it's really just a control system, when in reality, there's nothing but the divine background field,
Hmm.
and we're just concentrations in it.
Right.
Geez, would you walk into the fire or would you fight?
I would fight.
I'd
I'd
fight.
fight. I mean, I wouldn't fear the fire. I wouldn't fear the death part because I know reincarnation is real and there's nothing to fear. But to me, it just seems it seems a bit cowardly to relinquish any effort of fighting evil. And it just, to me, that's giving a platform for evil to stand on. Is like, oh, here are these good men that are doing nothing.
And they're such a divine people. Maybe they realize that I mean, this is speculation. I wasn't there, but maybe they realized that they were going to lose anyway. So they decided to retain their purity. Like, okay, I can fight and murder a bunch of people and or kill a bunch of people and have that, or I since we're going to lose anyway, we can just maintain our purity since we're all coming back.
I feel like that's a dogmatic version of purity, though. I feel like, I mean, maybe they had some infiltration from within to promote these pacifist ideas that ended up making them easier to vanquish because they did just kill themselves.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm just trying to like figure out like why were they?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I
I would
wasn't
fight.
there. I wasn't there, but the 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 depth in me that feels like it's coming from something beyond any timeline or description, um, that Christic energy seems like it would fight.
All
And
right.
even if it knew death, even if it knew it was hopeless and there was no room, victory seemed impossible. It's like in those moments, that's like even just aligning with this divine story that's continuing playing out. Like that is the hero emerging through that.
Yeah.
Not to just say, oh fuck it, like whatever, I'm just gonna go die because I don't want to dirty my hands or
I
anything like that.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm just trying to understand why they did it. And that's the other thing too, is that there's very little original Cathar documentation left. The Catholic Church was very thorough, and they're destroying um, all the Cathar documentation. We're extremely fortunate that any of the Apocrypha survived.
Mm,
Most of what we know about the Cathars actually comes from the records of the Inquisition.
mm.
All right.
Yeah, because even their perspective around, which is similar to like the Gnostic approach as well, that the world is only, um, or the physical reality is only evil, and so we're just to reject it all. To me, is a dogmatic view because there's nothing that is not divine. The physical reality can be has because it's the middle, it has the potential to be inverted, and that's the nature of it. It has this potential to be convoluted and distorted. But it's not to just reject it entirely. It's like, okay, where did this inversion occur and how can we write it back up?
Well, I agree with you. The
So like a
thing is,
metaphysical approach.
but also, is that even what the Cathars really believed?
Yeah, right.
Because that's just really what the Catholics say the
Right,
Cathars believed.
right,
So did they falsify those records?
right.
I mean, a genocide here, genocide there, a little
Yeah.
falsification of records.
I mean, we
Doesn't
know,
seem like such a big deal.
yeah, we know they did falsify things. So this is all just, yeah, we can't know for sure. But if that is the case, then that would be my position on it. And
It happened in one of the timelines.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right, Lizzie says thank you. So, okay, the Cathar prophecy and the Great Awakening. Before the last Cathar was silenced, a Cathar prophecy was spoken. In 1321, the last Cathar leader, Gilhem uh, Belibaste, was burned at the stake by the Catholic Inquisition, but he left a prophecy on August 21st, 1321 that said, "We shall return in 700 years when the laurel turns green again."
And great is Christ. So
Green
when
is Christ, yeah.
Christ return,
Saturday, August 21st, 2021 marks the 700-year time period that fulfills the prophecy. So this brings us to today,
if that date is
if
correct.
if the date's right, right? Um, so the prophecy is not just about the return of the Cathar movement itself, but about the rebirth of the way of love. The symbol of the laurel turning green is interpreted as the start of a new time of awakening and spiritual revival.
Mm.
So then here is just a bunch of Cathar ideals. Um, so, so the Cathar was like the church of love, right? So it has no fabric, only understanding. It has no membership, save those who know they belong. It has no rivals because it is non-competitive. It has no ambition, it seeks only to serve. It knows no boundaries, for nationalisms are unloving. It is not of itself because it seeks to enrich all groups and religions. It acknowledges all great teachers of all ages who have shown the truth of love. Those who participate practice the truth of love in all their beings. There is no walk of life or nationality that is a barrier. Those who are know. That's kind of like if you know, you know,
Hmm.
right? It seeks not to teach, but to be, and by being, enrich. It recognizes that the way we are may be the way of those around us because we are that way. It recognizes the whole planet as a being of which we are a part. It recognizes that the time has come for supreme transmutation, the ultimate alchemical act of conscious change of the ego into a voluntary return to the whole. It does not proclaim itself with a loud voice, but in the subtle realms of loving. It salutes all those in the past who have blazoned the path, but have paid the price. It admits no hierarchy or structure, for no one is greater than another. Its members shall know each other by their deeds, and by being, and by their eyes, and by no other outward sign save the fraternal embrace. Each one will dedicate their life to the silent loving of their neighbor and the environment and the planet, whilst carrying out their task, however exalted or humble. It recognizes the supremacy of the great idea, which may be accomplished if the human race practices the supremacy of love. It has no reward to offer either here or in the hereafter, save that of the infallible joy of being and loving. Each shall seek to advance the cause of understanding, doing good by stealth and teaching only by example. They shall heal their neighbor, their community, and our planet. They shall know no fear and feel no shame, and their witness shall prevail over all odds. It has no secret, no arcanium, no initiation, save that of true understanding of the power of love, and that if we want it to be so, the world will change, but only if we change ourselves first. All those who belong. They belong to the Church of Love. And that was intuited by Colum Bloy, who is since deceased and possibly returned,
Right.
right?
Cool.
And those are the ideals of the Cathars. And that brings us to today.
Yeah.
All right, that's why the world is the shape that it is.
Yeah. And
Um, Go ahead.
yeah, well, and just going back to that sort of debate on whether they were right or wrong and just allowing themselves to be killed and taken and maybe it was hopeless at the time. And that is the sort of faith in knowing that nothing can stop what is coming, that Christ will return again. So even if it was dark and dismal during that time period and this perhaps this whole time period, uh, if you look at it from a great year perspective, this time of night of darkness for potentially 12,000, 13,000 years or so, um, now we're entering into the new era where the Christic reign is much, much more firm. In in the night, the Antichrist had its moment to shine, and it did so in the ways that it did. And so maybe that's what they were relinquishing, was just knowing that it was not then at that time. However, I'd argue still that the 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 mechanisms within creation, as I mentioned at the beginning, of destroying stagnation whenever it is present, would lead them to that kind of fate if they were unwilling to stand and fight for what is right and what is good, even despite all odds, despite all adversity. And like you said, there's no knowing for sure whether that was real or the historical record of what we have and what we're aware of is even true. However, I would still say that even just for that ideal, it is for us to learn this lesson to stand up and fight whenever evil, to have such, as you've described before, to have such an intolerance of evil that we're willing to
Yep.
do anything.
The most intolerant people always win.
Right. And that's what keeps that destructive element of creation from removing us or destroying us, because that's the will and the continued effort of saying I want to live and I want to be on the side of life, the side of Christ, and anything that stands in that way, while being cautious of ideals and definitions and religions and things that can emerge from having that indignation. But that's the the declaration, not to misinterpret this beautiful passage of the Church of Love to take anything away from it, but also to include that love also means tough love. And if there's a layer of self that is hell-bent on destroying and harming and raping in whatever sort of ways that evil manifests, then it is my um, loving duty to enact that tough love at whatever severity is necessary, all the way up into putting an end to that individual's destructive path, which would be killing them, if that was necessary. So, of course, that gets tricky, and I'm sure we'll have infinite discussions around where to draw the line and how to do that. But as long as we learn not to just allow evil to just, oh, whatever, then we don't have to fall back into this
Right.
level of severity again. At least that's what's clear to me in this now. So that's what I'm sticking with.
Right. So this is the conclusion of part one. This is the history. So I was thinking that part two would be more of the actual metaphysics of the soul. Like, what do we know about it now? Um, and and that would be a whole other about this amount of time. That'd be a couple-hour conversation.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of really interesting information, but I feel that before we could discuss that, we have to discuss this because this is where we came from.
right,
And and the ideas that I'm going to express in the next show, I didn't invent them. They're not mine. All of them would eventually, one way or the other, come from the prehistoric shaman time period because there isn't any other source.
right, right. And it's possible that uh, this timeline of historical record only exists when we start to deviate away from the prehistoric shamanic uh, knowing of what
Right,
is and how this is all connected. So even the potential for these storylines to emerge comes from some layer of forgetting and stepping into the darkness, and but all of that is, in my opinion, purposeful. But
right. I mean, can you imagine? So you're living in prehistorical times, okay? And people are speaking more heart to heart
mhm,
than they are actually speaking with their mouth,
right,
right? So everyone's highly spiritually developed. Um, there isn't really any way of deceiving someone that you have ill will toward them
hmm,
because people can literally see your emotions and your energy state,
right,
right? Furthermore, since you feel what you do to everyone around you, there's no way to hurt someone else without feeling it yourself.
right,
I mean, how much crime would that prevent, right?
right,
And then on top of that, you don't number your years. There's just today.
right.
So there's no past and there's no future. So how do you then introduce some sort of perversion of history when you don't even have a concept? Because
Well,
the past is that's just how the energy dissipates. And the future is just how the energy comes together. But beyond that, it doesn't even really hold any special importance.
yeah. And then somehow, some way, we got kind of bored of that, and we're like, let's throw chaos into the mix and see what happens. And we're like, oh, this story is kind of cool. Let's
Mhm.
retell that an infinite number of ways.
Yeah.
And
What happens when I write down this telepathic thought and assign you a name?
yeah, geez.
Hey, I have a bright
Oh,
idea. Let's write a definition.
yeah,
See what happens.
opening Pandora's box. And but that's also what allows the full journey to be experienced, of
Yeah.
falling out of love so that we can deepen our connection with love. So
Right.
it's still part of being that same church of love. um, it's it's through that contrasting element that's allowing us to have a deeper relationship
Yeah.
with the fabric of life itself.
Yeah, you can't enjoy the experience and the exhilaration of salvation and triumph unless you're experiencing the terror of suffering and tragedy.
It's true. All elements of a great story, and we certainly love a good story.
And and when we're finally clear of the cabal that was started in ancient Egypt in ancient Babylon, when we are finally free of the usury and we're free of all these control systems and we can just exist directly with the divine within ourselves and above us, that is going to be such a wonderful uh, triumph.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the feeling of relief,
Yeah.
and in some ways, we're it's already starting to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we can even discuss this ideas.
Right.
So before, during the time period of the Cathars, which wasn't that long ago, criticize the Catholic Church, they might burn you alive at the stake.
Yeah. And your whole family.
But here, and your whole family, right? But here we can discuss these things, right? And I don't have to worry about. I don't feel any danger, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, the salvation and the triumph is already starting to occur, and it's just going to accelerate, according to the prophecy.
Yep.
The laurel has turned green again.
Yep. Thank God.
Thank God, because it was pretty bad for a while.
Yeah, it got pretty dark. All right. Well, cool. Anybody else got any questions before we wrap up today? Yeah, Maya says a lot to think about with no fear. Fear is important. Yeah, fear is just that contrasting element of what does the absence of love feel like? How can I experience the absence of everything, you know?
Well, she's absolutely right that fear, the primary choice that we have to make is fear or faith, right? So faith leads to tranquility, but fear leads to turmoil, right? And then tranquility leads to clarity, but the turmoil leads to confusion because you can't see, you can't
Hmm.
decide,
Hmm.
right? The clarity reveals prosperity, specifically prosperity of spirit, right? But the confusion, it's faith or fear, right? Um, tranquility or turmoil, clarity or confusion, prosperity or poverty, right? So if you don't have the clarity, you can't see the prosperity
Hmm.
of spirit. So then you experience the poverty,
Hmm.
right? Once you go through the prosperity of spirit, you're able to feel gratitude, right? But if you don't have that, then you fall into greed, right? But gratitude brings you into alignment with what? The salvation.
Hmm.
And then the salvation leads to triumph. Triumph leads to heaven. But fear is that first initial choice that you have to make.
Right.
Fear or faith.
And necessary so that we can truly experience the other half.
So, so if you were a Cathar, right, and they're about to burn you alive, you know, being burned in the state of faith would lead to a different outcome than being burned in the state of fear.
Right.
Right? So they burn with the state of fear, they don't come back in a positive way. But being burned in the state of faith, they come back in the 700 years when the laurel turns green.
Mm.
And then we all experience a great awakening.
Yep.
And there has been a rise of people remembering past lives as Cathars.
Mm.
That apparently is starting to become a thing.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
All right. Well, did you have any closing comments or anything else?
No, God bless you all. I
Yeah.
love you all. Thanks
Yeah.
for this time. Thank you for letting me share this with you.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We'll stay tuned. I'll post about part two whenever we get that ready to go. And um, yeah, just looking forward to more conversations on all things consciousness, which is you. So thanks for being here. Lots of love, and